This is Richard and Craig coming to you from the Monash Caulfield Micro Studio this morning.
Yep.
Yeah, and yeah, and once again, there's been a really great conversation happening this week, so please keep having that. Our mentors have been doing a really great job once again, and Craig, lots of excellent topics coming up.
Yeah, we're going to explore some of those for this week and try and emphasise some of the things that people are finding really useful, and also to explore some of the challenges that arise, because it's not always just smooth sailing learning mindfulness.
Absolutely not. It's an exploration and one long experiment, as we said. Yeah, so lots of sharing, as I've said already, and so lots of encouragement, the learners sort of encouraging one another to share ideas and supporting one another, so that's really great to see. Less learners are rushing through the course this time. In previous courses, people have sort of finished the whole 6 weeks in 1 week, and it's nice to see people taking their time a little bit this time around, and perhaps maybe going a little deeper and really exploring some of the practices and the exercises.
Yeah, taking time to reflect and integrate it into life. One thing that's been noted is that there's quite a few variations of the mindfulness practices, meditation practices that are offered. And we want you to have a sort of a sense there are many different ways to practice mindfulness meditation. But at the same time, we don't want you to just be necessarily flitting over them all. You might find yourself really connecting with one or other form of meditation practice, and to really sort of go into that for a period of time, could be a week, a few weeks, and then maybe you'd like to experiment with some of the others. But yeah, it's we don't want you to sort of feel like you've got to be flitting all over the place from one to another.
No, and I think our hope would be that over the 6 weeks you can explore lots of different meditation practices and find ones that work for you. But perhaps as we introduce one each week, perhaps just sort of really try that for a while and see how it goes.
Yeah. There's some also interesting comments as well about engaging during informal activities in day-to-day life and during meditation. Yeah.
One of the really, I guess, useful things that some learners have noticed is that they're already being mindful in their day-to-day life. You know, of course, we can practice it during meditation and really train that quality of attention, rewire the brain in those really key ways. But a lot of learners have noticed that they're already being mindful, drinking their coffee in the morning, or, you know, doing activities throughout the day, and noticing how when they're doing things in that way and really engaged, that they naturally enjoy the activity more, and perhaps, you know, when they enjoy it more, then they engage more fully with it. So that's making the link that's mindfulness has been really helpful.
Yes, living mindfully, and that's why I think to a lot of our hobbies and interests have the stress relieving effect and clear the mind, energize us, because we're never more mindful than when we're doing those things. And I think that seeing it as a way of living is excellent, taking meditation out of the chair and into day-to-day life.
Absolutely. And some learners also noticed that when they were meditating and trying to make that happen in a sort of an artificial kind of way, it took a lot of energy and actually made them more tense, and perhaps just to bring that same attitude of just being in the moment, being with the breath, being with the body, that was actually a better way to meditate. So,
thinking about being mindful, as a lot have already noticed, is not the same as being mindful.
No.
That's where actually we're in our head with another default sort of conversation with ourselves about, am I mindful, aren't I, can I be more mindful? So, you know, it's quite a different thing to actually be mindful, which is we're out of our head and engage with where we are.
Yes. And Craig, a lot of learners sharing observations about the fight and flight response, the stress response. Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, it's when we start practicing the body scan, for example, and we start to become familiar with our body, and we start to notice little cues about when we're activating that stress response, and that starts to wake us up to it. But we realise it's often grinding away on a low level in the background, and every so often we sort of spike. And so we do become more aware of it, and if we can become aware of it in a non-reactive way, then well and good. But it has a rhyme and a reason to be there, but the unfortunate thing is that virtually every time we're activating it, it doesn't have any good rhyme or reason to be there, and that comes at a cost. People have been noting or asking a bit about the freeze response, and the freeze response is a bit different. Now, I think there are two kinds of things that people often call the freeze response. Now, some small furry animals, and to a lesser extent humans, can have a freeze response. If you're cornered by a bear that's coming around the corner, it's a kind of a profound shutdown. So it's like actually
Playing dead.
Yeah, playing dead, and so dead like the physiology shuts down, almost like the thing's not breathing. So it really does appear as if it is dead. And that can occasionally be an adaptive response if there's no opportunity to fight or fly. There's another kind of freeze response, which is less adaptive, which we're probably more familiar with, and that's where we kind of freeze and don't know what to do. So that's not like a metabolic shutdown, that's kind of a stress response.
Almost like an overload of the brain,
an overload,
of the nervous system.
And the amygdala fires off so much that it overwhelms the executive functioning areas of the brain that are meant to be processing information, making decisions.
So that might be what students experience in an exam, for instance, that kind of thing.
Yeah, just, or a person who's in an acute situation just doesn't know what to do. And that's not helpful or adaptive, but it's understandable because, it's very stressful. But that's kind of freeze plus stress, which is different to the play dead, which is a real shutdown.
Yeah.
Humans do. There was an interesting comment about, somebody said to them, don't play dead in front of a bear because the bear will check.
Gnaw on your leg a little bit.
That's right. See if you move. You're sort of, you're not dead. So
revenant moment, perhaps.
Yes.
Yeah. Look, I'll note that some learners as well were a little bit worried about getting it right, getting the practice right or understanding things the way everybody else is understanding things. And I think certainly what we're really trying to encourage here is an attitude of openness and curiosity and exploration.
Yeah.
So there's no way to get it right, and please, keep making comments based on your own experience and asking questions, because I think that's really the best way of learning, that open-minded curiosity.
Because we can learn from the things that don't go well. From a perspective of learning, it's all good experience. So that happened, that had that effect. And then, of course, we can learn from the things that do seem to go well. And so they're both equally valuable in that way. And we should acknowledge what it feels like to be mindful and what it feels like to be unmindful, because we want that clear distinction to be clearer. And so, yes, very good if we don't beat ourselves up about what we think is getting it wrong.
Yes. And actually the topic of curiosity in general was really useful and interesting for a lot of the learners. So some noticed, that they're being more curious in their relationships and perhaps connecting on a deeper level with the people around them. Curiosity around emotions, replacing judgment with curiosity is, of course, a very useful thing that we cultivate in mindfulness, to just become really interested in, okay, I'm stressed, I'm having a fight, flight or freeze response, what's driving that, what's happening with this emotion. So there's a lot of learning that takes place.
Yeah, because when we notice something and there's a reactive judgment or criticism, no, why don't I do that? And which is very different to being interested in, oh, that's interesting, why did that happen? And just so that the curiosity just invites attention to engage, and with an open mind, which allows the learning. The judging and the criticising often covers it and obscures the potential for learning.
Yeah, and makes for a more superficial engagement or more superficial learning.
Yes. Yeah. Curiosity about the breath, paying attention to the breath, and then finding all of a sudden the breath becomes laboured and difficult, and that's not an uncommon thing.
No.
And it's like this sort of pay attention to something and then try and control it, or got some preconceived idea about how the breathing should be, rather than just, the body knows how to breathe. So
does a pretty good job of it overnight, doesn't it?
That's right.
Most of us don't wake up in the morning 8 hours later. Like.
Imagine if we had to do the breathing all the time, sort of like take another breath, now another breath. The body will do it quite naturally. So this sort of curiosity is different to the interfering and controlling.
And so we'd encourage learners, if they notice that their breath does change, just to notice how it changes, and as best as they can, just to let the breath happen naturally.
Yeah.
Just trusting that the body knows how to breathe. Yeah.
Some other interesting observations on curiosity as well.
Yeah, well, again, around the breath, one of our learners, I want to read this out actually, it's really great, noticed that when they first started meditating with the breath and paying attention, they noticed a whole lot of reactions to just the simple act of sitting and breathing. And they said, I started this exercise thinking, I don't want to do this. I can be mindful without doing this. I can't do this. I have a breathing problem and it will make me worse. And that they got as far as, it's not fair, which was when they started to laugh. They said, my mind was like a 3-year-old who doesn't want to wash. I was actually on the verge of, I'm going to drop out of this course and then I won't have to do this. I started the audio again and really stayed with my breath. which was a bit wobbly for a while, but the wobble was really interesting. It seems unbelievable that I could stress myself so much with such a small activity. We're talking about breathing here. And I'm now very interested in how often I'm thinking it's not fair, I shouldn't have to. I really love this exercise the second time.
Very valuable. I mean, just to notice the tendency for the mind to not want to engage, to, sort of, and that's part of the learning.
That's right.
To actually be aware of that happening and to work with that,
Yeah.
to actually just be curious about that, to move through that.
And to notice, of course, the attention's not actually with the breath. It's caught up in all of those judgments and reactions, which probably are happening for a lot of us throughout the day. And if we just bring our attention back to the breath itself, or back to what we're doing, often things just take care of themselves.
That's right. And insights often arise. And this is one of the things about mindfulness. It makes us more aware of the reactions and the attitudes that the mind has.
Yes.
And every so often we start to see them much more clearly.
That's right, both in meditation and also just in day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And actually, Craig, a lot of learners were talking about the informal practices.
Yes. And a lot are becoming aware of driving on automatic pilot, for example, and if we're more aware of how much of the time we're on automatic pilot, then we're making progress. We should see that as progress. It's not like, oh, that's terrible. It's like, oh, I'm starting to see what's going on. But also in the informal activities in day-to-day life, like being mindful while walking into a room and actually remembering why you went in there. And I mean, that's a neat trick. Or being mindful while putting down the keys.
A useful trick.
Yeah, because you can often arrive in a room and think, oh, why am I here?
What am I doing again? That's right.
Or wind up 80 years old and sitting in a nursing home thinking, how did I get here? I don't know what happened. I remember being 5 and I don't remember much until now. And life can be pretty much like that, a blur. So just those simple moments can help us to remember what we're doing. And just also to give the cognitive rest, the mental rest, of not having to constantly churn thoughts, which is what the mind often wants to do.
Yeah. And if you're driving on automatic pilot and you're in a Google car, all good. But otherwise, a little bit of mindfulness might be a good idea, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some of the cognitive practices people were describing.
Yeah. It's a really useful framework, isn't it, I think, for helping people understand different aspects of mindfulness, particularly acceptance. That was a big one that came up this week.
Yes.
And, what does it mean to accept something and how challenging that can be sometimes, just to allow things to be as they are and not necessarily react to them. The breath, for instance, like we were just talking about, or in fact, each moment.
That's right, the traffic jam you're sitting in, or, or like a cat brought a rat into their house last night in the middle of the night.
It's a present for you.
Live 2:30. There was a point at which I thought, I'm not going to be finding that rat. I'll just leave the little door.
It was probably in freeze mode somewhere, just lying in a corner.
That's right. Yeah. Anyway, but so yes, life presents us with all sorts of situations.
Yes.
So the attitude to it really determines our experience of it. And even if we notice a resistant attitude, then we can just be curious about the effect that has.
Yeah. And it's not a passivity or a resignation acceptance. No. I mean, we might need to accept that we need to make effort to change something. Yeah. It's certainly not about enabling bad behaviour or anything like that. It's just, I think it's a useful starting point to become present, to accept what's happening so that we can then act more effectively.
That's right. So to accept, okay, something's broken, we accept that. It doesn't mean we put our feet up and don't deal with it. It means we, from an attitude of acceptance, get on and deal with it.
Yes. And something else that was useful, Craig, were some of the analogies that we use. So did you want to say something about that? Yeah,
there are so many good, particularly dog analogies, like training the puppy, the gentleness, the patience, the consistency with which we train the mind. I suppose, too, we could sometimes see the mind when it's in one of its more surly states, as, and I mean, like if you're approached by an angry dog and you start to get it, you actually exacerbate, the anger and so on. So in a way, just learning to tame our mind in a very gentle, patient way can be a very, help us to understand the attitude with which we should practice mindfulness, meditation in particular.
Yes.
Yeah. So these sorts of things, exercise, it's like training a muscle in our brain and so on. So a lot of these metaphors help us to understand the process.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And just finally, some practice observations that arose as well.
Yeah, that's right. So learners have been really starting to notice some of the reactions in their minds around ticking clocks and tension in the body and the busyness in their mind. And so that's, of course, a very useful thing. It's one of the first things that happens. With mindfulness, to use another analogy, it's like turning on a light switch or lighting a lantern. You know, we maybe been in a dark room, which has been relatively comfortable. Every now and then maybe bump into something sharp or, you know, dangerous, but for the most part it's comfortable. And then with mindfulness, we start to turn on a lamp, you know, and suddenly we can look around and see, very busy in here, or I'm reacting to that. So it's a very useful thing.
Yeah. And even just noticing something in our reactivity to it, like a ticking clock or a distracted mind. And if we can just embrace that in an accepting way and, oh, well, that's what's happening at the moment, then it may change our experience rather than trying to block it out. I can't relax or I can't pay attention if that's there. It's just to embrace it and allow it to be there.
Yeah. So it's a really great learning and really great conversations. So please keep having them. Please keep contributing to them. We're loving reading the comments and making these feedback videos. So, yeah,
Fantastic.
Until next week.